Welcome to Olympian Cares, giving you the best in water testing and analysis. Today we're looking at city and state New York, where New York's landmark water testing law hinges on the state's health department. And this law leaves key decisions to an agency with a history of dragging its feet on implementing water quality legislation. So as we talk a lot about testing and different water bodies, we talk about different locations in New York: Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, Staten Island, Yonkers, Long Island. It's a good idea to know what's going on with the legislation surrounding all of your water quality and the testing. So 6 years after New York health officials were caught flat-footed by a water contamination crisis in Hoosick Falls, the state is set to require what may be the most extensive drinking water testing program in the nation for the PFAS family of forever chemicals. But the law's impact will depend on the approach taken by the State Department of Health, an agency with a history of dragging its feet in implementing water quality legislation, and the State Drinking Water Quality Council that advises it. All water utilities in the state will likely soon need to test for 23 PFAs. We've talked about PFAs. They're quite dangerous as they're a part of manufacturing and they're a part of chemicals. They come from different industries and they're called forever chemicals because they're very hard to get rid of in the water. And they can cause things like cancer. And they persist for years in the body and have been linked to cancer, liver damage, and immune system impairment. A bill passed by the state legislature in June would have gone even further, but the chapter amendments pressed by Governor Kathy Hochul, which the legislature is expected to adopt this month, would trim the list of contaminants to minimize the cost of testing. State Senate James Skoufis, the bill's sponsor, said even with that reduced scope, the law would make New York #1 in the nation in terms of tackling emerging contaminants. The law does not set contamination thresholds for the 23 compounds, the levels at which the public must be notified. Instead, it gave that responsibility to the health department. If history is any guide, that could be a problem, according to the environmental and health advocates. Throughout then Governor Andrew Cuomo's administration, the health department and the council show little appetite for leading a regulatory crackdown on PFAs. In 2017, state law authorized the department to set enforceable maximum contaminant levels for 3 chemicals in drinking water, which the agency did. But the law also required it to develop a list of additional contaminants, and 5 years later, the agency still hasn't named any. That means that today utilities are not required to test for those contaminants. Robert Hayes, director of Clean Water for Environmental Advocates, New York, said the half-decade of inaction was the impetus for last year's bill. The Department of Health and the Council had dragged their feet for so long, the legislature said. We cannot wait any longer. Also, the bill passed both chambers last early summer. Cuomo re-signed it in August, leaving Hochul with the choice of signing the legislation, vetoing it, or negotiating changes. And she did not respond to the email questions for the article. With the former administration, if anything was signed at all, it would have been so watered down, no pun intended, it would have been unrecognizable. So these are really dangerous chemicals, PFAs, and action does need to be taken. But it looks like the health department and the legislature are taking their time with that. And while that's happening, people are being affected by this. So the best thing you can do is to have your water periodically tested and analyzed to make sure there's no PFAs or other harmful contaminants.